Over to you, Sophie.
Gather round me, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. Come up close, for I have a tale to tell that you may learn from. You may find it troubling strange, but I assure you, every word of it is true. My story starts on Christmas Eve, about 4 of the afternoon. It was a damp, dreary winter evening, and the sun was gone below the rooftops of the close-packed streets around St. Paul's Cathedral. A damp mist was rising from the river and spreading over the cobblestones and crawling its way under the front door of Scrooge and Marley. In his small office at the back, Ebenezer Scrooge crouches over the ledger, where the comings and goings of the week's business had been neatly entered by his clerk, Bob. He struggles to read the figures, for he has a small stub of candle as the room's only source of light, and a very small fire behind him as its pitiful source of heat. In the room to the front, overlooking the street, Cratchit stands at his desk recording the day's transactions, ready to be copied into the main ledger when Scrooge has finished his minute examination. His fire is even smaller than his master's, and makes little enough impact. The front door bursts open, and a young man sweeps in past Cratchit, trailing the freezing air after him, and throws open the door to Scrooge's office.
Scrooge's nephew?
Yeah. Yes, that's you.
And Merry Christmas, Uncle. God save you.
Bah, humbug! I say bah, humbug to you.
Christmas, a humbug, Uncle. You don't mean that, I am sure.
I do. Merry Christmas. What right have you to be merry? What reason have you to be merry? You're poor enough.
Come then, what right have you to be dismal? What reason have you to be morose? You're rich enough.
Bah, humbug.
Don't be cross, Uncle.
What else can I be when I live with such a word of fools as you? Merry Christmas. Oh, upon Merry Christmas. What's Christmas time to you? But a time for paying bills without money. A time for finding yourself a year older, but not an hour richer. A time for balancing your books and having every item in them through a round dozen of months presented dead against you. If I could work my will, every idiot who goes around with Merry Christmas in his lips should be boiled with his pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart. He should.
Uncle.
Nephew, keep Christmas in your own way and let me keep it in mine.
Keep it? But you don't keep it.
Let me leave it alone then. Much good may it do you. Much good it has ever done you.
There are many things from which I might have derived good, by which I have not profited, I dare say, Christmas among the rest. But I am sure I have always thought of Christmas time, when it has come round, apart from the veneration due to its sacred name and origin. If anything belonging to it can be apart from that, as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time, the only time I know of in the long calendar of the year, when men and women seem by one consent to open up their shut up hearts freely, and to think of people below them as if they really were fellow passengers to the grave, and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. And therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe that it has to be done. It has done me good. and will do me good. And I say, God bless it.
Well said, sir. Well said.
Let me hear another sound from you, Cratchit, and you'll keep your Christmas by losing your situation. You're quite a powerful speaker, nephew. I wonder you don't go into Parliament.
Don't be angry, Uncle. Come dine with us tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll see you in hell with those other fools first.
But why? Why do you say that?
Tell me, why did you get married?
Because I fell in love.
Because you fell in love. That is the only thing in the world more ridiculous than a Merry Christmas. Good afternoon to you, nephew.
Nay, Uncle, but you never came to see me before that happened. Why give it as a reason for not coming now?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
I want nothing from you. I ask nothing of you. Why cannot we be friends?
Good afternoon.
I am sorry with all my heart to find you so resolute. We have never had any quarrel, to which I have been a party, but I have made the trial in homage to Christmas, and I'll keep my Christmas humour to the last. So, a Merry Christmas, Uncle.
Good afternoon.
And a Happy New Year.
I'll say it again. Good afternoon.
And with that, Good's nephew took his leave, stopping on the way out to pass on season's greetings to Bob Cratchit, who thanked him for them.
There's another fellow, my clerk. 15 shillings a week and a wife and a family talking about a Merry Christmas. I'll retire to Bedlam, I'm certain of it.
Bob Cratchit, in letting Scrooge's nephew out, had let 2 other people in. They were portly gentlemen, pleasant to behold, and now stood with their hats off in Scrooge's office. They had books and papers in their hands and
Scrooge and Marley's, I believe. Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley?
Mr. Marley's been dead these 7 years. He died 7 years ago this very night.
We have no doubt his liberality is well represented by his surviving partner.
At the ominous word liberality, Scrooge frowned and shook his head and handed the credentials back.
At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, it is more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provision for the poor and destitute, who suffer greatly at the present time. Many thousands are in want of common necessaries. Hundreds of thousands are in want of common comfort, sir.
Are there no prisons, sir?
Plenty of prisons.
And the union workhouses? They still in operation?
They are, still. I wish I could say they were not.
The treadmill and the poor law aren't still in full vigour, then?
Both very busy, sir.
Okay, I was afraid from what you said at first that something had occurred to stop them in their usual course. I'm very glad to hear it.
Under the impression that they scarcely furnish Christian cheer of mind or body to the multitude, a few of us are endeavouring to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. We choose this time because it is a time of all others when want is keenly felt and abundance rejoices. What shall I put you down for?
Nothing.
You wish to be anonymous?
I wish to be left alone. Since you asked me what I wish, gentlemen, this is my answer. I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support the establishments I have mentioned. They cost me enough, and those who are badly off must go there.
Many can't go there, and many would rather die.
If they would rather die,
Said Scrooge.
they had better do it, and decrease the surplus population. Besides, excuse me, I don't know that.
But you might know it.
It's not my business. It's enough for a man to understand his own business and not to interfere with other people's. Mine occupies me constantly. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Seeing clearly that it'd be useless to pursue their point, the two gentlemen withdrew. Scrooge resumed the papers with an improved opinion of himself, and in a more facetious temper than was usual with him. Meanwhile, the fog and darkness thickened so that people ran about with flaming torches, offering their services to go before horses in carriages and conduct them on their way. The ancient tower of a church, whose gruff old bell was always peeping slyly down at Scrooge out of a Gothic window in the wall, became invisible and struck the hours and quarters in the tremulous vibrations afterwards, as if its teeth were chattering in its frozen head up there. The cold became intense. The Lord Mayor, in the stronghold of the mighty mansion house, gave orders to his 50 cooks and butlers to keep Christmas as a Lord Mayor's household should. And even the little tailor, whom he'd fined 5 shillings on the previous Monday for being drunk and bloodthirsty in the streets, stirred up tomorrow's pudding in his garret, while his lean wife and the baby sallied out to buy the beef. But at the first sound of "God bless you, merry gentlemen, may nothing you dismay," Scrooge seized the ruler with such energy of action that the singer fled in terror, leaving the keyhole to the fog and even more congenial frost. At length, the hour of shutting up the counting house arrived. With an ill will, Scrooge indicated to Bob Cratchit that the work for the day was over.
Oh, sorry. You will want all day tomorrow, I suppose?
If quite convenient, sir.
It's not convenient, and it's not fair. If I was to sub half a crown for it, would you think yourself ill-used, I'll be bound? And yet you don't think me ill-used when I pay a day's wages for no work.
But, sir, it's only one day a year.
A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. But I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here only earlier next morning.
Of course, sir.
Scrooge walked out with a growl. The office was closed in a twinkling, and the clerk, with the long ends of his white scarf dangling below his waist, went down a slide on Cornhill at the end of a line of boys 20 times in honour of its being Christmas Eve, and then ran home to Camden Town as hard as he could pelt to play at blindman's buff. Scrooge took his melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern and went home to bed. Scrooge put the key into his front door. He happened to glance at the knocker. It was a large one, and he'd looked upon it hundreds of times before. But this time he fancied it took on the shape of the face of his dead partner, Jacob Marley. He stepped back in alarm, but when he looked again, it had resumed its usual shape of a lion's head. He went inside, and more to reassure himself than anything else, he slammed the door shut. The hall and stairs echoed with the noise, and played a trick with his ears, so that he thought he heard something moving ahead. Taking the smallest candle, he cautiously searched the rooms in front and above. There was nothing. Nevertheless, he locked the bedroom door behind him and retired for the night. He had not been long asleep when he was wakened by a sudden blast of cold in the air. As he struggled into wakefulness, he was sure he could see that the fog was in the room, but in its midst was a pair of eyes.
No! Who are you? What do you want with me?
Much.
Who are you?
Ask me who I was.
Who were you then? You're very particular for a ghost.
In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley.
Can you sit down?
I can.
Well, do it then.
You don't believe in me.
I do not.
What evidence would you have of my reality beyond that of your senses?
I do not know.
Why do you doubt your senses?
because a little thing affects them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheats. You may be an undigested bit of beef. You may be a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato. There's more of gravy than grave about you, whatever you are.
There was something very awful, too, in the spectres being provided with an infernal atmosphere of its own. Scrooge could not feel it himself, but this was clearly the case, for though the ghost sat perfectly motionless, its hair and skirts and tassels were still agitated, as if by the hot vapour from an oven.
You see this toothpick?
I do,
You're looking at it?
but I see it.
Well, I have but to swallow this, and be for the rest of my days persecuted by a legion of goblins, all of my own creation. Humbug, I tell you, humbug.
At this, the spirit raised a frightful cry and shook its chain with such a dismal and appalling noise that Scrooge held on tight to his chair to save himself from falling in a swoon. How much greater was his horror when the phantom, taking off the bandage round its head, as if it were too warm to wear indoors, its lower jaw dropped down upon its breast. Scrooge fell upon his knees and clasped his hands before his face.
Oh, mercy, mercy, dreadful apparition, why do you trouble me?
Man of the worldly mind, do you believe in me or not?
I do, I must. But why do spirits walk the earth, and why do they come to me?
It is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow men and travel far and wide. And if that spirit does not forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death. It is doomed to wander through the world. Oh, woe is me, and witness what it cannot share, but might have shared in earth and turned to happiness.
Again, the spectre raised a cry and shook its chain and wrung its shadowy hands.
You are fettered, sir, tell me why.
I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it on of my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. Is its pattern strange to you? Or would you know the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full as heavy and as long as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have laboured in it since. It is a ponderous chain.
Jacob! Old Jacob Marley, me old mucker, tell me more. Speak comfort to me, Jacob.
I have none to give. It comes from other regions, Ebenezer Scrooge, and is conveyed by other ministers to other kinds of men. Nor can I tell you what I would. A very little more is all permitted to me. I cannot rest, I cannot stay, I cannot linger anywhere. My spirit never walked beyond our counting house. Mark me, in life my spirit never roved beyond the narrow limits of our money-changing hole, and weary journeys lie before me.
You must have been, how can I say it, very slow about it, Jacob.
Slow?
7 years dead and travelling all the time.
The whole time, no rest, no peace, incessant torture of remorse.
You travel fast?
On the wings of the wind.
You might have got over a great quantity of ground in 7 years.
Oh, captive bound and double ironed, not to know that ages of incessant labour by immortal creatures for this earth must pass into eternity before the good of which it is susceptible is all developed. Not to know that any Christian spirit working kindly in its little sphere, whatever it may be, will find its mortal life too short for its vast means of usefulness. Not to know that no space of regret can make amends for one's life's opportunity misused. Yet such was I. Oh, such was I.
But you were always a good man of business, Jacob.
Business? Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business. And this time of the rolling year, I suffer most. Why did I walk through crowds of fellow beings with my eyes turned down and never raised them to the blessed star, which led the wise men to a poor abode? Were there no poor homes to which its light might have conducted me?
Scrooge was very much dismayed to hear the spectre going on at this rate, and began to quake exceedingly.
Hear me, my time is nearly gone.
I will, but don't be hard upon me. Don't be flowery, Jacob. Pray.
How is it that I appear before you in a shape you can see? I may not tell. I have sat invisible beside you many and many a day. That is no light part of my penance. I am here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate, a chance and hope of my procuring Ebenezer.
You're always a good friend to me. Thank you.
You will be haunted by three spirits.
Is that a chance and hope you mentioned, Jacob?
It is.
I think I'd rather not.
Without their visits, you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first tomorrow when the bell tolls one.
Couldn't I have them all at once? Have it all over?
Expect the second on the next night at the same hour. The third upon the next night, when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more, and look that, for your own sake, to remember what has passed between us.
When it had said these words, the spectre took its wrapper from the table and bound it round its head as before. Scrooge knew this by the smart sound its teeth made when the jaws were brought together by the bandage. And with that, he left by the door through which he had come. Scrooge tried to say humbug, but stopped at the first syllable. And being, from the emotion he'd undergone, or the fatigues of the day, or his glimpse of the invisible world, or the dull conversation of the ghost, or the lateness of the hour, much in need of repose, went straight to bed without undressing, and fell asleep upon the instant. When Scrooge awoke, it was so dark that looking out of bed he could scarcely distinguish the transparent window. To his great astonishment, the heavy bell of a neighbouring church struck the 4 quarters. So he listened for the hour. It went on from 6 to 7, and from 7 to 8, and regularly up to 12, and stopped. 12. It was past 2 when he went to bed. The clock was wrong.
12. It isn't possible that I can't slept through the whole day and far into another night. It isn't possible anything has happened to the sun, and this is 12 at noon.
Marley's ghost bothered him exceedingly. Every time he resolved within himself that it was all a dream, his mind flew back again like a strong spring released to its first position and presented the same problem to be worked all through. Scrooge lay in this state until the chime had gone 3 quarters more, when he remembered on a sudden that the ghost had warned him of a visitation when the bell tolled 1. He resolved to lie awake until the hour was past. The quarter was so long that he was more than once convinced he must have sunk into a doze unconsciously and missed the clock. At length it broke upon his listening ear. The bell at last rang the quarters, one after the other, until it reached the hour.
The hour itself. That's a relief. Nothing else has come.
As he was starting to feel relief at the coming of the hour, the curtains of his bed were drawn aside. He found himself face to face with the unearthly visitor who drew them.
Are you the spirit, sir, whose coming was foretold to me?
I am.
Who and what are you?
I am this ghost of Christmas past.
The long past?
No, your past.
So what business brings you here?
Your welfare.
How can this all be about my welfare?
Your reclamation, then. Take heed. Rise and walk with me.
It would have been in vain for Scrooge to have protested that this was not the weather for walking. Spirit took him firmly by the hand and made directly towards the window.
No, I am mortal and liable to fall.
Bear but a touch of my hand there in your heart, and you shall be upheld in more than this.
As the words were spoken, they passed through the wall and stood upon an open country road with fields on either hand. The darkness and the mist had vanished too, and it was a clear, cold winter day with snow upon the ground.
Oh, my good heavens. I was bred in this place. I was a boy here.
Your lip is trembling. And what is that glistening upon your cheek?
It's nothing. It's just a pimple.
You recollect the way?
Remember it? I could walk it blindfold.
Then strange to have forgotten it for so many years. Let us go on.
They walked along. There passed by them some boys riding on shaggy ponies and calling to each other.
These are but shadows of the things that have been. They have no consciousness of us. The school is not quite deserted. A solitary child, neglected by his friends, is still there.
I know it.
They left the high
Good.
road and soon approached a mansion of dull red brick. It was a large house, but one of broken wood. They went across the hall to a door at the back of the house. It opened before them and disclosed a melancholy room, made barer still by lines of plain deal forms and desks. At one of these, a lonely boy was reading near a feeble fire. Scrooge sat down upon a form and wept to see his poor forgotten self he used to be. Suddenly, a man in foreign garments, wonderfully real and distinct to look at, stood outside the window.
Why, it's Ali Baba. It's dear old honest Ali Baba. Yes, I know. One Christmas time, when yonder solitary child was left in there alone, he did come for the first time, just like that. Poor boy. And Valentine and his wild brother Orson. There they go. And what's the name who was just put down in his drawers asleep at the gate of Damascus? Don't you see him? And the Sultan's groom turned upside down by the genie. There he is upon his head. Serve him right, I'm glad of it. What business had he to be married to the princess?
You hear Scrooge expending all the earnestness of his nature on such subjects in a most extraordinary voice between laughing and crying, and to see his heightened and excited face would have been a surprise to his business friends in the city.
There's the pirate, Robinson Crusoe. Poor Robinson Crusoe, where have you been? Poor boy, it's too late now.
What is the matter?
Nothing. There was a boy singing a Christmas carol at my door last night. I should like to have given him something, that's all.
Oh, let's see another Christmas.
Scrooge's former self grew larger at the words, and the room became a little darker and more dirty. The panels shrunk, the windows cracked, fragments of plaster fell out of the ceiling, and the naked laths were shown instead. And there he was, alone again, when all the other boys had gone home for the jolly holiday. He was not reading now, but walking up and down despairingly. The door opened, and a little girl, much younger than the boy, came darting in, and putting her arms around his neck, addressed him as dear, dear brother.
I have come to bring you home, dear brother, to bring you home.
Home, little fellow?
Yes. Home for good and all. Home for ever and ever. Father is so much kinder than he used to be. That's home like heaven. He spoke so gently to me one dear night when I was going to bed that I was not afraid to ask him once more if you might come home. And he said, yes, you should, and sent me in a coach to bring you. And you're to be a man and are never to come back here. But first, we're to be together all the Christmas long and have the merriest time in all the world.
You're quite a woman, little Fan.
Always a delicate creature whom a breath might have withered. But she had a large heart.
So she had. You're right. I'll not gainsay it. Spirit, God forbid.
She died a woman and had, as I think, children.
One child.
True, your nephew.
Yes, that's right.
They were now in the busy thoroughfares of the city. It was made plain enough by the dressing of the shops that here too it was Christmas time again. But it was evening, and the streets were lighted up. The ghost stopped at a certain warehouse door and asked Scrooge if he knew it.
Know it? I was apprenticed here.
They went in and caught sight of an old gentleman in a Welsh wig, sitting behind such a high desk that if he'd been 2 inches taller, he must have knocked his head against the ceiling.
Why, it's old Fezziwig. Bless his heart, it's Fezziwig alive again. Oh.
Yo ho there, Ebenezer, Dick.
Scrooge's former self, now grown a young man, came briskly in, accompanied by his fellow apprentice.
Dick Wilkins, to be sure. Bless me, yes. There he is. He was very much attached to me, was Dick. Poor Dick. Dear.
Yo ho, my boys. No more work tonight. Christmas Eve, Dick. Christmas, Ebenezer. Let's have the shutters up before a man can say Jack Robinson. Hilly ho. Clear away, my lads, and let's have lots of room here. Hilly ho, Dick. Cheer up, Ebenezer. Clear away.
It was done in a minute. Every movable was packed off as if it were dismissed from public life for evermore. The floor was swept and watered, the lamps were trimmed, fuel was heaped upon the fire, and the warehouse was as snug and warm and dry and bright a ballroom as you would desire to see upon a winter's night. In came a fiddler with a music book. In came Mrs. Fezziwig, one vast substantial smile. In came the 3 Miss Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable. In came the 6 young followers whose hearts they broke. In came all the young men and women employed in the business. There were dances, and there were forfeits, and more, and there was cake, and there was negus, and there was a great piece of cold roast, and cold boiled, and there were mince pies, and plenty of beer. But the great effect of the evening came when the fiddler struck up Sir Roger de Coverley. Then old Fezziwig stood out to dance with Mrs. Fezziwig. Dancing went on until 11. During the whole of this time, Scrooge had acted like a man out of his wits. His heart and soul were in the scene, and with his former self. It was not till now, when the bright faces of his former self and Dick were turned from them, that he remembered the ghost, and became conscious that it was looking full upon him, while the light upon its head burnt very clear.
A small matter to make these silly folks so full of gratitude.
Small?
Why? Is it not? He has spent but a few pounds of your mortal money, 3 or 4 perhaps. Is that so much that he deserves this praise?
It isn't that, Spirit. He has the power to render us happy or unhappy, to make our service light or burdensome, a pleasure or a toil. Say that his power lies in words and looks, in things so slight and insignificant that it is impossible to add and count them up. What then? The happiness he gives us is quite as great as if it cost a fortune.
What is the matter?
Nothing particularly.
something, I think.
No. I'd like to be able to say a word or two to my clerk just now, that's all.
My time grows short. Quick!
This was not addressed to Scrooge, or to anyone whom he could see, but it produced an immediate effect. For again Scrooge saw himself. He was older now, a man in the prime of life. His face had not the harsh and rigid lines of later years, but it had begun to wear the signs of care and avarice. There was an eager, greedy, restless motion in the eye, which showed the passion that had taken root, and where the shadow of the growing tree would fall. He was not alone, but sat by the side of a fair young girl in a mourning dress.
It matters little to you, very little. Another idol has displaced me, and if it can cheer and comfort you in time to come, as I would have tried to do, I have no just cause to grieve.
What
idol has displaced you?
A golden one.
This is the even-handed dealing of the world. There is nothing on which it is so hard as poverty, and there is nothing it professes to condemn with such severity as the pursuit of wealth.
You fear the world too much. All your other hopes have merged into the hope of being beyond the chance of its sordid reproach. I have seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one until the master passion gain engrosses you, have I not?
What then? Even if I have grown so much wiser, what then? I'm not changed towards you.
No.
The girl shook her head.
Am I?
Our contract is an old one. It was made when we were both poor and content to be so, until in good season we could improve our worldly fortune by our patient industry. You are changed. When that contract was made, you were another man.
I was a boy.
Your own feeling tells you that you were not what you are. I am. That which promised happiness when we were young in heart is fraught with misery now that we are two. How often and how keenly I have thought of this, I will not say. It is enough that I have thought of it and can release you.
Have I ever sought release?
In words, no, never.
And what then?
In a changed nature, in an altered spirit, in another atmosphere of life, another hope as its great end, in everything that made my love of any worth or value in your sight. If this contract had never been between us, tell me, would you seek me out and try to win me now? No.
You think not?
I would gladly think otherwise if I could, heaven knows, but when I have learned a truth like this, I know how strong and irresistible it must be. But if you were free today, tomorrow, yesterday, can even I believe that you would choose a darless girl who in your very confidence with her, weigh everything by gain? Or choosing her, if for a moment you were false enough to your one guiding principle to do so, do I not know that your repentance and regret would surely follow? I do. And I release you with a full heart for the love of him you once were. You may, the memory of what is past, hopes me hope you will have pain in this. A very, very brief time, and you will dismiss the recollection of it gladly as an unprofitable dream from which it happened well that you awoke. May you be happy in the life you have chosen.
Spirit, show me no more. Conduct me home. Why do you delight in torturing me?
One shadow more.
No more, no more. I don't want to see it. No, show me no more.
The relentless ghost pinioned him in both his arms and forced him to observe what happened next. They were in another scene and place, a room not very large or handsome, but full of comfort. Near to the winter fire sat a beautiful young girl, so like that last that Scrooge believed it was the same, until he saw her, now a comely matron, sitting opposite her daughter. Mother and daughter laughed heartily at the sport and antics of the other children who were there and enjoyed it very much. But now a knocking at the door was heard, and such a rush immediately ensued. She, with laughing face, was borne towards it, the centre of a flushed and boisterous group, just in time to greet the father, who came home attended by a man laden with Christmas toys and presents. He was greeted with irrepressible affection. And now Scrooge looked on more attentively than ever, and the master of the house, having his daughter leaning fondly on him, sat down with her and her mother at his own far side. And when he thought that such another creature might have called him father, and been a spring in the haggard winter of his life, his sight grew very dim indeed.
Belle, I saw an old friend of yours this afternoon.
Who was it?
Guess.
Oh, how can I? I don't know. Mr. Scrooge.
Mr. Scrooge it was. I passed his office window, and as it was not shut up, and he had a candle inside, I could scarcely help seeing him. His partner lies upon the point of death, I hear, and there he sat alone, quite alone in the world, I do believe.
Spirit, remove me from this place.
Ah, I told you. These were shadows of the things that have been. That they are what they are. Do not blame me.
Remove me, I can't bear it. Leave me. Take me back, haunt me no longer.
In the struggle, in which the ghost gave no visible resistance on its own part, Scrooge observed that its light was burning high and bright, and he seized the extinguisher cap on its head and pressed it down. The spirit dropped beneath it, but though Scrooge pressed it down with all his force, he could not hide the light which streamed from under it in an unbroken flood upon the ground. Overcome by an irresistible drowsiness and a sense of being in his own bedroom, he gave the cap a parting squeeze and had barely time to reel to bed before he sank into a heavy sleep.